diversity is our strength, and we forge our future with the same flame as our steel. Oh, there's a place in the Midwest, and it's calling you home. The best part of Portage is what's next. The best part of Portage is you. There's more for you in Indiana. There's a place in the Midwest, 50 miles southeast of Chicago, nestled near the coast of Lake Michigan. It's a place driven by what's coming next, a place where industry is the lifeblood of its community, and its pulse is gritted with sand and steel, fire and smoke. It's a city building its future together, one business, one family, and one home at a time. This is a place for makers, doers, and dreamers. It's where the global marketplace meets hometown values, where Americana isn't just a tradition, it's a way of life. Here, your experience makes the difference. With access to railroads, major waterways, and 8 different highways, this is a place in motion, sending goods, services, and ideas not just across the state, but across the world. And when the work ends, the day's just beginning, with beaches like West Beach in the Indiana Dunes National Park, exciting hiking and biking trails like the Diana of the Dunes Dare or the BMX track, and local treasures and exciting festivals, you'll know you're in more than just a bedroom community. From veterans of foreign wars to hometown heroes, our diversity is our strength, and we forge our future with the same flame as our steel. Oh, there's a place in the Midwest, and it's calling you home. The best part of Portage is what's next. The best part of Portage is you. There's more for you in Indiana. There's a place in the Midwest, 50 miles southeast of Chicago, nestled near the coast of Lake Michigan. It's a place driven by what's coming next, a place where industry is the lifeblood of its community, and its pulse is gritted with sand and steel, fire and smoke. It's a city building its future together, one business, one family, and one home at a time. This is a place for makers, doers, and dreamers. It's where the global marketplace meets hometown values, where Americana isn't just a tradition, it's a way of life. Here, your experience makes the difference. With access to railroads, major waterways, and 8 different highways, this is a place in motion, sending goods, services, and ideas not just across the state, but across the world. And when the work ends, the day's just beginning, with beaches like West Beach in the Indiana Dunes National Park, exciting hiking and biking trails like the Diana of the Dunes Dare or the BMX track, and local treasures and exciting festivals, you'll know you're in more than just a bedroom community. From veterans of foreign wars to hometown heroes, our diversity is our strength, and we forge our future with the same flame as our steel. Oh, there's a place in the Midwest, and it's calling you home. The best part of Portage is what's next. The best part of Portage is you. There's more for you in Indiana. There's a place in the Midwest, 50 miles southeast of Chicago, nestled near the...
Welcome to the special RDC meeting. Will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do the call to order.
Mayor Bonta,
Here.
Commissioner Ambler is absent. Commissioner Josviak. Here. Commissioner Lack.
Here.
Commissioner Munt is absent. Commissioner Vasquez. Here.
And I apologize, that was actually the roll call, not the call to order. I guess I did that already. We don't have minutes or claims. Staff reports. Dan, did you want us to just go into it when we get to the items, or what would be the best way to do it?
Sure, I can start with the budget if you'd like.
Sure thing.
Is this on? Yes. Yes, it's on. So on Friday, I did forward to, or Sonia had forwarded to everybody the budget for your review. It is based upon two of the funds of the Redevelopment Commission. You may have them on your screen in front of you, but they are definitely on the screen behind you. I know that. So there are two separate funds. There is the Redevelopment Commission's General Fund, which is 2555, and the Redevelopment Commission's Allocation Fund, which is for the purpose of collection revenues from tax increment revenue and the expenditure of those tax increment revenues under fund number 4445. I have provided the basic budget for those, and I'll go through those with you. But first, I do want to thank Sonia, Sandy, as well as Liz and Tammy in the clerk's office for providing all the information and backup structure, which I'll go through with you very quickly. The schedules that support the numbers that are either revenues or expenditures and that were used to determine the budget were from all the appropriations report and fund reports provided by the clerk's office. Liz and Tammy, and then the projects as well as the capital expenditure schedule were in working with Sonia and as well as Sandy. So thank you to them. What I do have is in working this year with the budget, I made it consistent with the clerk's office's revenue identifiers as well as expenditure classifications and identifiers. And so basically, as you can see on the screen, the revenues for the general fund for the year, the beginning balance based upon last year's ending balance on December 31st, 2024 was I'm just going to round numbers, $413,000. We did receive on average about $35,000 in interest last year, which is a revenue. Imposed fees were $140,000 last year, but due to roll-offs, it's calculated to be about $125,000. That is the impact imposed fee that is paid to the Redevelopment Commission or distributed to the Redevelopment Commission as a result of tax savings from abatements in the city of Portage. There is a 15% imposed fee imposed on all tax savings. The rentals and leases averaged about $350,000. Disposal of capital asset and land, that was an asset, an estimate of about $20,000. That seems to be consistent with prior years. Reimbursements and refunds in reviewing information from prior years and obligations. This year, a refund from the RZB bond from the trustee in 2025 is estimated to be $121,940. That's because that bond has matured and the trustee still had it in their fund. So it comes back to the Redevelopment Commission. So Liz did give that, the city clerk treasurer did provide that actual number from the trustee. Utilities at $5,000 from reimbursements. Donations, other revenues, and miscellaneous revenues, it all totals to about $1,085,000 for next year in the general fund. Now, as far as expenditures, most of these expenditures are referenced, and you can see on the far right, I did show which worksheet was referenced for that. So under commission staff, the budget is for $97,647,000. Other professional fees and services, $25,000. Office supplies, $1,000. Operating, landscaping, lawn mowing, and snow plowing, $200,000. That is down from last year. Publication of notices, promotion, $20,000. Liability, $55,000. Utilities, $76,500. Repair and maintenance, any facilities that need to be repaired or maintained cannot be used from allocation funds. So that comes under your general fund, $100,000. Other services was estimated at $10,000. And then you can see the NERC building for operations, janitorial, landscaping, mowing, pest control, alarm and security facilities, utilities, liability, repairs and maintenance, and other services comes to about $150,000. The total of the expenditures from the general fund is estimated to be $735,000. The estimate of a surplus or rollover into next year would be about $350,000. So if you compare that to this year of $413,000, it's less by about $63,000. But that doesn't take into account any budget numbers that don't exceed the budget amount. What we will do is, for each one of the budgets, just as an example, we will have Virginia in the clerk treasurer's office will become the finance manager who will oversee the budget and the projects. And so as revenues and expenditures are collected and revenue and expenditures and disbursements are made, we will track that every month. So we can, now that I understand how to put this on the screen, we can now put that on the screen for you every time you have a question on the budget, or if there's a project, and we can look directly at that budget line item. I don't know if you want me to go through the schedules that we used for the backup information, but I did include what was the general revenues and cash flows from last year. You can see that and by month and total. We did include all the expenditures from last year by account code, title, and the expenditures year to date through December 31st, 2024. As well as the expenditures just for the NERC building. And those values were used for the budget estimates. We also did include salaries that are paid from the Redevelopment Commission General Fund. As you can see, I went back 2 years, so you can see that in fiscal year 2023, it was about $206,000. We've reduced that to $98,000 of salary from the general fund for Redevelopment Commission staff. As far as professional services, I allocated a certain amount of the legal counsel to the commission to the general fund because it's 50-50 general fund, general consulting, attendance at meetings, as opposed to consulting for allocation areas. And then the IT streaming, which is, of course, the service for the meetings and assistance with IT. Lastly, I did go through and identify the totals of the electric, gas, water for not only our Redevelopment Commission utilities, but the NERC utilities too, so that you can see where we use the values for the estimates. If there are any questions on the general fund budget, I'd be more than happy to answer those at the time, and then I'll go into the allocation area.
Any questions?
Done?
None for
Awesome.
me.
Good. All right, I'll move on to the allocation fund. So the allocation fund 4445, what I will do is start from the beginning. And I do have, so you can see, I did take all the information from the prior years, and you can see that the ending balance for fiscal year 23 was $8.5 million. The ending balance for 24 was a little over $7 million. You can see that in your budget at the top of the revenues, that's where that number links to. $7,012,000 of carryover from fiscal year 24. Tax increment revenue is estimated to be based upon installment, $4.8 million and $3.250. I do have a schedule that shows the tax increment. So I went back and looked over the last 4 years to determine how much tax increment was distributed, and then determined what the estimate would be for the fiscal year 2025, there's your $8,050,000. So if I go back to the budget and add those two numbers for the distribution, it comes to $8,050,000. Interest income, again, is from the cash revenue that I received from the allocation fund. I took the interest income from the year on that schedule and basically identified that it would be similar or about the same at $175,000. The disposal of capital asset land, again, it's historically been about $20,000 to $25,000. However, if land were disposed of, that's an additional source of revenue for the Redevelopment Commission. The only other revenue sources would be donations, which is a total estimate, as well as other revenues and miscellaneous. Those came off the revenue flows because there have been, over the years, there have been miscellaneous revenue and refunds from various actions taken by the commission for not only utilities or for projects if refunds do occur, and that's where they end up in the reimbursements collection. So the total of amount of revenues is estimated to be about $15,300,000 for this year. Now, the category of spending, professional fees, $264,000. That ties out to the schedule for professional fees for all the services provided from ED Finance, Municipal Financial Advisor, engineering, legal services, real estate brokerage, and GIS. And I've identified the entities that have submitted agreements or contracts. There's your 264 at the bottom, which totals out, and that pulls over. Your debt service on obligations. What I've done is I've gone through all the obligations that are currently outstanding for the Redevelopment Commission. There are currently 4 of them. I've identified the debt service payments due in fiscal year 2025. For the outstanding bonds and obligations, it comes to $3.328 million. There is a bond for which allocation tax increment is pledged to a lease. Those are the Series 2015 lease rental revenue bonds. That shows on a separate line, so that's the $542,000 below it. So that's a debt service obligation and payment. That one should actually, I'll put in their lease bonds so that you know. There's your 542. The expenditure, I'll do the expenditure last because I'm sure you'll have questions on that. The payments to eligible entities and educational and training programs, that's the potential grant to the Portage Township School System that has been budgeted for. Capital expenditure for economic development and redevelopment plans. That is for planning purposes, whether it is the comprehensive plan or redevelopment, economic development strategy plans for the year. General contributions, economic development organization, $50,000 for the Portage Economic Development Corporation, $25,000 local nonprofit organizations. That could be for YMCA or for, I'm just throwing that out, or it can be for promotions.
I'm
that
sure they're
impact
watching,
the
so yeah,
allocation
no.
area. Right. I don't know why I said that, but it just came out. That seemed to be the one.
It was in my brain too. We must just, yeah.
Right. Grants or loans to assist neighborhood corporations, $50,000. Under the other legally permitted grants or loans, the $700,000 is the amount, initial amount, or what we call in finance a tranche of a anticipated, which we talked about last month, $3 million, not to exceed $3 million bond for public safety, vehicles and equipment. The $700,000 is for this year to purchase those vehicles that are available now. The remainder would be for the biggest capital expenditure, which would be the truck. So that would be repaid once the bond is issued and would then become a revenue. Other legal grants or loans, I entered $50,000 for the purpose of a match to a grant that may become available, a total estimate. Here you'll find the expenditures related to capital expenses for the fire, police, ambulatory, and public safety services, and park department grants. I've identified on the right, each is to receive $75,000. The parks is at $49,000 because they've requested a project of $26,000 for park trail bridges. So your 75 minus the 26 is your 49, and that's where the 199 comes from, because the 26 is under the capital expenditures. The $25,000 is an estimate based upon any reimbursables that may be necessary to the city for any work. The miscellaneous of $4,080 is only placed in there to make the anticipated surplus or deficit at 4.670. Otherwise, it's just it's not a round number. So the intent there is at the end of the year, assuming we meet our budget and don't exceed it, there should be about $4.67 million to roll over next year, which is less than the amount that is rolled over from this year, but that typically you're not going to use your full budgets. Typically you're not. And last year when I prepared the budget, I used the same internal policy of budgeting for a surplus between $4.5 to $5 million to be rolled over. So assuming budgets don't go or projects aren't done as expected, it should be in the area of $6 to $7 million again. What I do want to go over is the individual. Now, we did have a study session in December, and we talked about various projects. So I did make a list of all the projects, and we identified them by priority, whether high, moderate, or low. And so I identified all the projects from my notes and prior year projects that were listed. I can go into them in detail if you like. I'll hit the major ones. But what I did for the estimate of the budget amount was I assumed that 95% of the high priority projects would be spent this year, that we would consider or get to 50% of the moderate and maybe 10% of the low priority projects. That's how we came to the $5,094,000, which in the budget, if you see, it pulls the number on line 35. There's your $5,094,000. That doesn't mean it's going to be all spent. It's just we prioritize projects based upon our study session. Now, we've also talked about potential land purchases. That came to about $7.2 million based upon just estimates of assessed value and other. That doesn't mean that's what the cost is. So going down the line, the largest was Community Crossing Grant Pledge. I did speak with Sandy McDaniel about the Community Crossing Grant and those resurfacing projects that were specific to the allocation area. And it was determined the match would be necessary would be about $1.5 million. I did, Sandy's here. If there's any questions on the roads that would be resurfaced, she does have a list of those roads available. But this would be the match. The city would also have to match dollars in order to have those projects or resurfacings done outside the allocation area. So that's just the allocation area's pledge towards the Community Crossings Grant. What is the probability of receiving a Community Crossings Grant, would you know, from prior years? Pardon? We'll get it. So it's a major resurfacing of a lot of roads in the city of Portage, specific to the allocation area and the city. The second one is your Trail Bridges Rehabilitation Project. We've shown it here as a capital project, but it would come out of the Parks Grant. There's your public safety equipment purchase loan of $700,000. The Central Avenue Overpass Amendment at $187,000. Central Avenue West, remainder of the construction engineering and construction oversight, $940,000. Ecological restoration, which is required, $35,000 a year. Deadwooding is to prune and maintain the trees at Promenade. There's been identified a safety issue of the trees. So that's going in, according to Sandy, it may not be $30,000. Would that be correct, Sandy? But that's what we budgeted. So it's most likely going to be less. Downtown baseball field relocation project to relocate the current and existing fields in downtown to an alternative location to open that up for mixed use and downtown development on the east barbell of the promenade. Central Avenue Road Diet, consistent with the HWC Downtown Master Plan, $65,000 to update that plan. Comprehensive planning and strategy, $75,000. Downtown Promenade, updating the electric to 50 amp for the purposes of the downtown food truck potential and for vendors. Currently now, there are some instances where the electric isn't adequate to service what the requirements are for the vendors. Garrington building demolition, $750,000. That was a discussion of a project to open up that area for, and you could see under a low project, Garrington Park project, to develop that as a community center, community park area, and we estimated that to be about $4 million, but again, that's low. That's a low priority. Lastly is Willow Creek Transportation and Traffic Analysis. That is a traffic analysis to determine the level of traffic, the signalization, or any improvements to make the corridor more efficient for travel from the north side to the south side and State Route US 6. Other projects were the Salt Creek Kayak Access, $200,000. Recreational facility equipment inventory for the parks at $25,000. If they deem to go forward with that, that's something that my recommendation would be to come out of their grant amount of money of $75,000. And the rest are low priority projects that we talked about in the future.
Hey, Dan,
Yes.
say on the land purchases, how would you say it? Maybe just if we skip to the next spot?
What's that?
If we just kind of jump, because I'm just reading that, and I agree with that, but yeah, if we jump over to community crossings, I think.
Okay. So basically, the high priority came to about 4.6 million, moderate at 225,000, low priority at 5.8 million, but of course, that's Garrington Park development was 4 million, so it was a large amount of money. Now, there were some other projects for community crossing, potential projects that we identified. Movie theater area, asphalting, that's off Route 6. That was a high priority, but that's something that needs to have further discussion, I believe, at this time. So those projects were discussed. Based upon our study session that we had in December, if there was anything missing, please let me know. I did verify the values with my notes and going over it with Sandy and with Bill as far as potential values of land. So if there's any questions, I can go back to the budget, but it would show the amount of surplus at $4.67 million after everything's said and done. Are there any questions on the allocation?
When we met in December, I remember having a conversation about basketball courts made available for our youth.
Okay.
Which category would that fall under?
That would fall under most likely the Parks Department from their grant, if they were to put that in.
The Parks
Or-
Department is also doing their own planning right now for some things related to the floor that they've got over at Oakwood. So we could even talk to them together and see how that matches with what they're working on with their incoming bond that they're doing.
Right. Or it would come under the park development of the Garrington area.
So is that typical to have a $7 million
Rollover?
rollover?
For Portage or in
for-
general?
In general, comparing cities,
Typically,
to
yes.
po-
You want to
okay.
roll over dollars. Yes. Now, it's also, what we intend to roll, by policy, you'd want to have a certain amount, and this is my opinion. You want to have a certain amount that you roll over and plan because you have to have contingencies for new projects that may become before the city or for projects that may go over budget. You want to have that contingency. The reason between the 4 and the 7 is sometimes projects aren't completed in that fiscal year, so the dollars are rolled over to the next year. We just haven't expended them. So that's why it's the difference between the 4 and the 7.
What you're saying is like we might budget a project, I'm just making up a number. Let's say that it's budgeted for $3 million
You couldn't,
or let's go lower. Let's go to like a $700,000 project. We might hit the end of the year having spent like $300,000, but we know that for the project to get done, we have to have some
Right.
planned rollover.
yes.
To
You
be
may
able to
encumber
finish it.
those funds for a subsequent year, or it may be the agreement or contract for the project may be approved in June, and they don't finish it until April or March of next year. So only, 550,000 of it may be billed, so you have that rollover, but then we have to budget for it next year.
Then historically, as far as Portage is concerned, the budget or the rollover has been anywhere between under 2 million up
Right.
to 8 million in the last 10 years.
Right.
And it's important to have at least $3 million there because bond payments are due in the first
Right.
part of January.
Exactly.
Have to pay that. to
Right.
pay.
So now, on this schedule here, which shows each fund by year, I can go back and put 3 or 4 more prior years in there so you can see the rollover or the carryover, but I just went back the last 3 years, last 2 years, sorry.
my next question would be, who determines which projects are completed in a particular order. We have high, moderate, and low. What if this team, and I'm not sure who makes that decision, would make a recommendation for that low then to become a high priority?
Do you mind if
First-
I say, yeah, that's us, the Redevelopment Commission. So what we've got is a working list of projects and what we anticipate they cost. And as a team, we've met and gone over what we consider high priority, low priority. But the decisions to act on any of those projects, or to skip any because another worthwhile project comes along, or to not do one out of cost concern, that's the action of this board.
Right.
So in terms of what's considered high priority, medium priority, low priority, that's based on meetings that we've had, like in our working group sessions.
Right.
So of course, our own opinions could change. I mean, I know we got 2 people not here, but all 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us could all wake up one day and say, you know what? We don't think this thing is a big priority, anymore. We're not stuck with the fact that it's marked green on a list, but it's really good for us to know what we've already talked about that we want to do or that we'd like to see happen in our city. One, so you don't lose track of them, because in government you can lose track of really good goals. And I think the other part is to remember, like, hey, if we have the opportunity to do one, we can look back and say, okay, but what are we choosing not to do at this time? There might be a low priority project that becomes very feasible a given year, and it might be the feasibility outweighs the higher priority, which is currently unfeasible. Is that fair to say, Dan?
Yes. So what I do is I apply a simple, non-complex Monte Carlo analysis, which goes in and says you have high, moderate, and low priorities. So think of a high priority as it's a project you want to do within this fiscal year to 2 to 3 fiscal years in the future. I mean, things change. Moderate is anywhere from 1 to 5 years, and low would be 1 to 10 years, or 1 to 7, 1 to 10. Doesn't mean you couldn't move a low priority project up, which is why when I looked at the, let me go back. When I looked at the capital expenditure of projects, I accounted for that by saying, 95% of your high priority projects you may approve this year. 50% of your moderate you may approve, and of your low priorities, you may approve 580,000 of them. I'm not exactly sure, but that seems to be a good ratio. I could change that if necessary, but you want to get as much of your high priorities as done. Doesn't mean all of them, but most of them.
So if a commissioner has a request for something to be changed from moderate to high, do we then ask that that be placed on the agenda for discussion and then approval? How does that work?
I mean, we could, but it's probably more simple. It's just like communicating that this is no longer a high priority, for you. Or when we do another working group session, we might discuss some of these and we review it and we reassess what's high or what's low. But we're not obligated based on the color code here. This is really for our reference
Right.
based on past
Right.
discussions we've all had.
Right.
Not even separately, but, all together. But no, we're under no obligation to stick with a certain schedule based on green, yellow, or pink. Is that pink or
It's like
red?
a yellow or a
Just
pink.
trying to
Yeah.
figure out what would be the most effective and equitable way to prioritize.
Yeah, and I think that that's based on just even what we have here, based on our discussions from the working group. It's a number of factors that include like what is just straight up the highest priority we want to see it done, and then also we try our best to estimate what's high priority and feasible. I love the Garrison Park idea. It's not low priority because I don't think it's important. It's because the $4 million, price that we think that might be, that's a feasibility issue,
Right. Right. So we can go into more detail. I tried to keep it broad in the context of 3 categories. If you were to go through a capital improvement planning process, you would then prioritize them on a rating scale of 1 to 10. 7, 8, and 9 would be high, 4, 5, and 6 would be moderate, and 1 through 4 would be low. Low
So-
meaning you may get to it, you may not, it may even drop off.
Would that be presented at a work session?
We could do that,
or-
sure.
Okay.
In fact, I would even recommend that at each work session, that just reviewing the budget update quarterly in detail like this would be recommended.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
If there's no questions,
No.
I would make a motion for the commission to entertain approval of the budget specific to Fund Fund 4445 and for Fund, I can make sure I get my numbers right, 2555 for the year fiscal year '25.
Is anyone so moved?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That gets us to the approval of the public safety vehicle loan payment. It's Dan Bowditch. I was going to say if the chiefs were going to come up together and do like a co-talk, but maybe Mr. Bowditch could handle it from here.
It'd probably be better if the Chiefs came up.
Then actually, I'm going to ask the chiefs, could you guys come up and do like a little co-talk together?
As stated, the $700,000 is to purchase the equipment that is available at this point in time.
You want to go first? Yours is, mine's the easier of the two. Mike has a larger amount of needs right now. Mine is the bigger purchase down the line. Don't worry, I'm not going away. Mine is for an administrative vehicle, $49,600 for the vehicle itself, and then the upfitting. You should have the documentation in front of you. For the grand total of everything is $59,875.17. And that's for the upfitting, the outfitting, and the vehicle itself.
Does that come out of the 700,000?
Yes.
Yes.
That's just his part of the 700,000. But as noted, eventually something more expensive fire-related is going to come in, but yeah. And then does that get us to the police chief? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is the larger truck placed in order already?
The tower truck?
Yeah.
Yes, so that is placed. We've contacted the manufacturer of the vehicle. We've placed the order. They have been very accommodating. This is a last generation for this particular motor of this vehicle, meaning everything from this motor forward is going to have to meet all of the new EPA requirements. Being a first-generation motor, the motor hasn't even been produced yet, so there's not really a lot of knowledge on how that motor is going to work. So, being said, this manufacturer has told us that we have the ability to place the order for the motor. No money is due until we would take possession of the vehicle. If we don't have the money at the time that we could take possession of the vehicle, they would attempt for 6 months to sell the vehicle, which they feel that it could go to a bidding war because people are going to want these vehicles because it is a last generation of that particular motor.
And as noted, and we had a good discussion at the last meeting about, it's not it's not a comparison like technology. So like when you're buying like schools or like iPads, for like a school system, you want like usually like the latest, newest thing. But in this case, because of I don't know if alpha is the right word or what have you, but the next generation,
Right.
We'd actually like our timeline to allow it that we essentially skip being the group that finds out how those run and then be ready in the future to buy the second version of them when they come out.
Right, and we don't have the luxury currently of waiting for that second generation motor to come out because you're looking at, several years down the line, and the vehicle we're replacing is already 27 years old.
It's not to say that the next one's going to be bad, it's just there's a lot we don't know, whereas we know how to work with the current generation. So
Right.
in this case, it might be a really good deal to end up with the last of its generation for a while.
Absolutely.
Tag. All right, ours is a lot more complicated with more vendors and stuff, so I'm actually looking for a little guidance on this. We have the biggest priority right now is we've got a couple vehicles that we found for very specific uses that we found on sale, for lack of a better term, because they're older model years and such. So we've done some research on that. I can go over that. It's different for me because we don't usually come to you guys for vehicle stuff. So the way ours works is obviously different vehicles we'll go through, but then there's the laptops, there's the computer stands, the radios, all the things that go into the car that kind of go through that process. So, I have a whole list of all the different things that are going to go in there. I guess I need to figure out if I am bringing these, piecemealing these each meeting, or how, I'm not real sure how to go about that. My biggest priorities right now are the computers and a handful of vehicles, though. But as the other things come up, I'm just not sure what the best process is.
That's where I think I might turn to our redevelopment director, possibly, legal, but I think in this case, Dan, what's the most appropriate way usually when you recommend these sorts of things?
For purchase of the equipment?
Yes?
Yeah, so like what we would do in the past was we'd bring to Board of Works or wherever, we'd bring vehicle quotes or the bids or whatever. We'd get those, then we would go back through and, okay, who's gonna do the upfitting? Because, it's a piece each way. So then we would do each separate thing. Some of the stuff was minimal, so we just took it out of there. But since it's all coming out of this $1 amount now,
Right.
and it's all coming here, I'm just not sure.
I think what's being asked is, would it be best for us to prove the dollar amount so that it's then budgeted within that dollar amount as the department is? Okay.
And then with the purchase, Scott, on that, you have to show the quotes, the prices. Every detail. Before the purchase.
Okay, so if I can just maybe scratch off a couple things off the list today, we can try to do that then, maybe that's the best way? Okay. So I believe I sent over, good grief. I said, we're not as easy as him. So computers. We would like to purchase 7 computers. These are we're looking at a total of 11 vehicles that we're going to purchase. One is for animal control, the other 10 will go directly to the police department. So a couple of those vehicles are going to go to the Detective Bureau in different places, so we don't need computers for each of them. If you guys aren't aware, all of our data comes in by computer. Dispatch comes over the air, but it's very minimal. Everything else comes through the computer. Our reports are done on the computers. All the mapping is done on the computers. The names, the phone numbers, all that information that is for a call comes on there. So it's absolutely imperative. We have to have them in the cars, and after about every 5 years from being in a car and going through the change in technology and things, they don't cut it after that. So what we've done is, as we order cars, we order computers, we kind of do the whole package, everything that comes in the vehicle, which is essentially their office space. So we have 3 different quotes. We have Dell, Midwest Public Safety, and CDW. Dell came in the cheapest, $20,240.22. You can see Midwest Public Safety was $21,854, and CDW was $22,362.13. We've done with Dell before. They usually get it to us the fastest. The thing about them, too, is if you see, they don't have an extra warranty price. So the others are a little higher on some of the individual components, but Dell builds in the warranty to their price. So overall, for the whole package, they're cheaper. So I guess the first thing is we would like to spend the $20,240.22 to get 7 computers for these new cars.
And as noted, this is within the budget that we've approved. This is just so we're asking for this to be its own motion, is that fair to say? Or?
Yes.
So is anybody move for that motion?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So I will tell you that we went through kind of just based on the prices that we've gotten and everything, and on the very high side, we're at, I think, total, all said and done with everything, at $598, $789. So I think there was the $700,000 between us and fire. So we're even if we spend all of that, what were you guys at, 50? 50. So we should be $40,000 ish under what was allotted. So I don't know if that helps for the.
Makes me feel better, Chief.
Yeah, for the long term of where we're progressing to. Okay, so another thing we are looking at is the animal control van. So we have an animal control van that is a 2015 with 115,000 miles. That's pretty much end of life, or pretty close on anything like that. You're putting animals in there almost every day, that amount of miles, that many years. It's a money pit at this point. So Captain Hughes went out, was looking for something similar, and what he found was that there are some vehicles that had, they're used vehicles that had some previous damage that was repaired. So we found two 2022 Ram ProMaster City Cargo vans, which is what we will need for this. And he found, like I said, 3 of them that had some previous damage that was repaired. That's why we're getting a better price. So we're getting essentially a newer vehicle to us that should last us for the foreseeable future. One we found at Auto Savvy. It's out of Maryville, $24,382. The other one is New Motors Cars out of Addison, Illinois, $25,335, and Auto Showcase of Carroll Stream, $31,995. So for that one, we'd like to proceed with making the purchase from the Maryville one, obviously closer, and it's cheaper. So, and I think that Captain Hughes did a good job of finding us something that'll work without us having to buy a brand-new vehicle. So we went into this planning on just buying the police vehicles, knowing that we needed to find a way to get this van also purchased. But we were able to kind of wheel and deal with the dollar amount that was for us, and we're able to get this too. So I think it's a huge thing we won't have to worry about into next year. So, yeah, so that would be the second item.
Do any of those vehicles come with a warranty?
I am honestly not entirely sure. I would assume there's probably still something on there. Looks like in the 20s. 2022. Yeah. I want to say. At least a year. Yeah, 20.
And powertrain as well, longer.
Yeah, under 25,000.
125,000?
Under 25,000, yeah. No, that wouldn't be a good deal for us.
Should be about a year full coverage and maybe 3 years powertrain?
Yeah, I think the idea was these aren't, obviously anything can break, but they're not put under as much stress as a patrol vehicle, and if we weren't able to get a used one, one of these options, then we probably don't have the money to get it this year, without, going high on that dollar amount. I think we'd like to save some money if we can, to not get all the way up to that 700,000, so, yeah, there's probably a gamble that we don't have as long of a warranty on a brand new one, but I think this is, being economical, it's probably a pretty good decision, so.
Thank you.
A question, would
Sure.
Leasing vehicles be a consideration?
Yeah.
It's been a terrible experience for the city. And, to put it simply, it just doesn't work out very well that way. I could give you a history lesson after this meeting, if you'd like, but yeah.
Well, I can give you the 10-second option, or the 1-minute version. How about that? So we buy a car. Usually the way our cars work is we buy them, they start in the patrol division, they get a decent amount of miles. Then at some point, maybe they get carried down to the detective bureau if they're decent, or they go to our reserve division, which has 0 budget. We use them till they pretty much are done, then we sell them in an auction. If you lease the vehicle after your 5 years, we turn in the car and we have nothing. So we're going to be confronting that in a couple of years. In 2027, I think we have somewhere like 15 vehicles that we did lease. We made a decision under the prior administration to lease. It was what was available at the time, but in 2 years, we're turning in 15 cars, and those are 15 cars that we do not have now for the Detective Bureau standbys. That's the other thing, standbys. So if my car breaks today, say you pit somebody and you have damage on your car, I got to find something to drive, and those standbys are what we do, when somebody has an accident or there's a vehicle that goes down or whatnot. So by owning them, it just puts us in a better spot. We've already been talking to the mayor, we're going to be in a little bit of a situation 2 years from now because of those leases. Now, at the time, it was what was decided, but we're going to have to deal with those consequences 2 years from now when 15 cars are gone. So I'm not a fan of it, and I'm sure he could fill you in more, but that's the basic reason on my end.
I appreciate the
Yeah,
clarification.
no problem, no problem. So again, for this one, we're asking for the purchase of the 2022 Ram ProMaster from Auto Savvy out of Maryville. It's $24,382.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. I got my paperwork all out of order here, sorry. Okay. So, like I said, we're trying to get a total of 10 vehicles plus the animal control van. There is a state bid that we were waiting on the numbers for Dodge Durangos. So that's a separate issue. We are also looking to increase our fleet with 2 pickup trucks. So the pickup trucks are pretty useful to us because as police, we do a little bit of everything. It may be getting called to moving a sign out of the road, picking up bicycles. Our guys went the other day and had to move a boulder out of the middle of 20. Rather than call the street department out in the middle of the night, they went and loaded it up in a truck, moved it. So we like to have at least 1 or 2 trucks out per shift. So we were looking around, and here's the other problem that we're running into is the auto dealers, our manufacturers, keep changing things up. So for instance, we've got a couple of Ram trucks out there with the V8 engine in them. They are not making those for police anymore. The 2025s either come with a V6 or a twin turbo engine, both more expensive than the traditional V8 that we've had. So again, in interest of trying to find the best deal for the city, we went around, we got 4 different quotes for 2 Dodge Rams. LaPorte Chrysler in LaPorte has 2 2023s. So they're 2 years old, but they're on the lot. They don't have any miles. And because of that, they came in at a very discounted price of $39,780. The other 3 dealerships we reached out to, nobody has a 2024 or 2023. All they've got are 2025s. John Jones out of down south in Indiana, they have the twin turbo version at $44,599. Bozak, $44,559, or the V6, which I don't want any part of. Big pickup truck with a V6 I don't think that's a good deal for us. $42,160, and then Thomas Dodge, if you look at their prices, they're even more, $45,799 and $43,399. So what we're proposing is the ability to buy the 2 2023 Dodge Rams from LaPorte Chrysler at $39,780, a grand total of $79,566, which if you look down the line, it's about $10,000 cheaper, give or take, from the others. And again, I think that's that savings because of the fact that it's an older model, still new, but older model. And, you know, I'm more comfortable with that because we've got those. I don't know anything about the new engine that they're putting in those. Sometimes I'm a little leery when we first buy those and they put them into police service. May work out. I'm sure you guys read some of the stuff with Dodge that was going on in the last couple of years. So we feel like that's the best for us to get at this time, but it's also the cheapest. So that would be the next item that we were looking to have approval for.
I move that we approve the purchase of the 2 pickup trucks for the police department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, and then I have one more that I didn't get on the list, so I'll go through it for you. I do have the paperwork if you want to look at it. And the other reason we're trying to push some of the stuff to move forward too is because we have concerns that prices are going to start going up. I don't know what's going to happen out there, but we do have some concerns with, especially with a lot of these things that the lights, the radios, the things that we upfit, they come from all different places. And I mean, without getting political, I have concerns that if we know prices now, there's a potential for them to change. So that's why we're really hoping to get moving forward with this. The last thing that we were looking at buying is a Chevy Tahoe. We would like to try to get one of these. We're looking for a bigger vehicle. Right now, we do not have a command center or anything to use if we have a major operation. So essentially right now, it's, whichever administrator is there, we pull up, and if there's elements or we need to get out, for a quieter place to talk about what we're working on, it's, we're either crammed into a pickup truck or one of the smaller Durangos. So we were looking to get one vehicle that's a little bit bigger. The other problem we're running into is that Dodge is no longer making the Chargers for police, and we're being told that they may be getting out of the Durango game for police. So at some point, we need to start looking at some of these other brands and seeing what's out there to determine if we may need to make a switch going into next year. The state police have already moved to Tahoes. I think Maryville was making a move, either Fords or Tahoes. So at some point, we've got to start taking a look. So same thing, we started looking around. The 2025 Tahoe, as with everything else, went up in price by like somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000. We did find a couple 2024s. So there is a 2024 Tahoe at Kelly Chevy, which happens to be the same place that they're getting their vehicle from. The price on that is $50,750. We got prices from John Jones, and again, they only have a 2025, $56,590.65. And lastly, Bozak is at $58,660. So again, the 1 year difference in the vehicle being $50,575 for the 1 year, the older model, if we're able to go with this vehicle, is going to save us about $6,000. So that would be my next request.
Are these prices out of the state procurement?
So the state bid, there's only one state bid this year, and it's only for Durangos. And that's where we want to purchase our other 7 vehicles from. The last 7, we'd like to do Durangos, and that's all going to be on the state bid. So there wasn't anything on Dodges, there wasn't anything on the Chevys this year. For whatever reason, they only awarded, it was my understanding, they only awarded the Durangos, and it was actually just recently. Like, usually we have it by now, but it just came out. So I've got the numbers for that, but it's not as big of a time crunch, so I wasn't prepared to go into that today, but I can too, but that's the difference. So we're looking to get these other ones that are not on that state bid. There is no state bid for them, so that's why we did the quotes from the different places, so.
So Chief, are the costs, for example, for this vehicle comparable to what would have been bid out by the state pool or less?
So the Durangos are cheaper. They are.
Than going through the pool, state pool? for bid.
So the state price on the Durangos are, yeah, it's a cheaper price
Right.
than the truck by a smidge and than the Tahoe. So, again, we were looking at the trucks don't do the same thing as the Durango, and the Tahoe doesn't.
Right.
The Durangos don't have as much space as
Right.
the Tahoe. So, for everybody else, the average patrol officer, we're just gonna go right in line with the state bid since that just came out, so. I don't know if that answered your question.
But it's
or
a
not,
comparable price?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I know it's a lot.
Make a motion to approve the 2024 Tahoe.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So with that being said, so the state bid, then, should we come back for that? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have a number for it, but my understanding is it actually went down a little bit, so there might actually be a little better number, and I didn't, unfortunately, I
Right.
didn't know what all we were doing today, so I didn't bring that with me.
With
so-
time, when it comes to timing and the, how necessary it is there enough time to wait until the next meeting, or would we be best to schedule a special meeting closer to where that might be?
Next meeting will be on the 27th of
Oh,
this
so then
month.
we've got, yeah.
So these haven't been built, so these were more of a priority because they're sitting on a lot and anybody could come and see that price and snatch them up. That was my biggest concern. The state bid will be there. It'll just set us back a month, but, as soon as we make that, as soon as you give them the approval to buy those, then we'll put in the order for those and then they have to build them. So it's not the end of the world. Like I said, we could wake up tomorrow and these other ones get sold. So
Right.
that was kind of our concern on those because they're older models and there's a bigger price difference if somebody else we're shopping for the same thing, we could get bought out. So that was my big concern for these things tonight. So that's actually all, all I've got, so.
Well, that was it. Well, that's,
Well, thank you for the detail, and I appreciate the
Yeah,
time
Thank you so
that,
much,
hopefully
Chief.
that made sense.
that your staff put into getting the quotes and identifying the best price for the service and the vehicle you
Awesome.
need.
Thanks, I'll pass that along, because,
Thank you.
like I said, Captain Hughes put a lot of work into it, so give him
Right.
credit where the credit's due.
And if you can provide that information to Sonia, so we
Yep.
have it for the record, that would be great. You don't have to do it today or send it to her electronically, either way.
So I want to revisit mine real quick, just so I can, now that I have the clarification for the bid, or I'm sorry, for the approval. We had previously, when we started this process, we thought that we were getting approval under the Board of Works, so we had checked the different prices and had approval through the Board of Works for our different bids. That's how we came out with the 2024 Chevy Silverado. We did have multiple bids. That was the cheapest vehicle that we could find. The upfitting also, we had 3 different bids for the upfitting, that all of those were approved through the Board of Works. That's how we came up with the $7,520.17, because that was also the cheapest bid for the upfitting. The outfitting, those are miscellaneous items. Those are much smaller in cost, so we don't really need to put out to bid. So I guess I would need approval as well for the $59,875,000, or I'm sorry, $59,875.17.
I make a motion to.
Dan, is that
approve-
correct? I'm
Was
sorry.
that done earlier?
I thought we
thought
we
we
did
already
that already for you.
So we never did an approval for it. I just kind of rattled off the information, and Attorney McClure clarified that we needed to have
Oh,
a
well
motion
then,
and an approval.
there we go.
All right, I make
That's why I'm
the,
revisiting this.
Thank you.
I make the motion to approve the purchase of the 2024 Chevy Silverado with the upgrades for $59,875.17.
All right, very good.
Second.
We had a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Thank you
All
all
right.
very much.
Thanks for clarifying that. I could have
Thanks for,
sworn we
yeah, thanks for the
go back and watch this
clarification, Chief.
video and be like, wait,
Yep.
mesmerized by the PowerPoint.
Would just like to say that approving all of these vehicles, and I think that it will help our police and fire department do what they do best, and that's taking care of business on a daily basis. So I just want to thank the rest of the commissioners for their approval.
Absolutely, and thank you. And I just wanted to state too, when I repeated the example with the technology, it's only because I think it was a really good example at our last meeting. And I just know if there's somebody watching this who maybe didn't watch the last, I just thought it was good to revisit the comparison there. So we've got real estate issues. Mr. Afton?
Good evening, Commissioners. We have the issue that we brought up at the last meeting relative to the Gary National Bank Trust property on the north side. I believe at the last meeting, we told you that the seller wasn't interested based on the revised appraisal prices. So we went back to him and tried to get a discussion going to find out what his hot topics were and what we could do to keep the deal going. We came up with some ideas. We identified a piece of property, or he identified basically for us, 9/10 of an acre property of the 48 that I'm around the numbers, that we were looking at. There's 9/10 of an acre that's actually on the east side of the waterway that he currently has leased to one of the boat clubs up there. I think it's Marquette Boat Club, that he would like to keep. And it really had no value to the RDC with our plans for the west side of the waterway. So we worked out a deal that he could keep that parcel that's actually 3/4 of an existing parcel. So we will have to split one parcel and go through some engineering with Tom's group to get that parcel split so that half the acre can go to the RDC and 9/10 of the acre can stay with the current seller. We renegotiated the price down to $1.5 million in lieu of the 1.8 that we originally had offered. And then going with the attorney, we come up with a way to justify that, or needed to justify it, which is the document that was presented to you, I believe, probably via email this morning. Scott, is there something you want to explain about the process, or should I just go into it?
I think it's important for the board to realize what we're going through is a little abnormal. Normally, we go through the approval process, the review process, what are the appraisals, what's the mission of the redevelopment commission, and then we make an offers within those range. This is a little bit unique. We are going above and beyond potentially the appraisal. We have that statutory authority to do that. Within that statutory authority, though, it's incumbent upon us at this meeting to provide the justification for the change from the appraisal. And basically, the statutory requirements, you're looking for things like strategic location, alignment with other redevelopment projects, the economic impact. And I think here, as we go through this short presentation, it's pretty clear the significant impact or the significant, I was surprised that as we work through putting this together, how this was actually a very easy memorandum to put together. You would think that sitting down going from 1.1 to 1.5 statutorily would be a very hard jump. I can tell you there was very little wordsmithing because there was so much data that supports the underlying purchase. But that's what we need to do as a board. We need to have the justification in a memorandum standpoint for the board to review, talk, adopt, if in fact we are going to go above and beyond the appraised value. For the reasoning behind it, I'll let Bill talk more, but that's the legal framework that we're working within.
The appraiser devalued the property for various reasons. One of the big ones is that the parcels, the 11 parcels that make up the trust property over there are not continuous. They're kind of scattered all around, which is typically a negative. The positive of it is that you already own everything else around it. So you're basically taking that checkerboard and filling in. There's an exhibit that's in that package of yours that kind of looks like this. Be easier for you to see your exhibit. That's the parcels that are within the trust. All the other parcels around that area you do own. So now we will have a larger piece. In fact, we will own everything except one parcel on the west side of the ditch if this the deal goes through. So the close-up is the parcel where it shows the boat slips on the east side of the waterway. We really don't have any interests over there. The rest of that's all private property. Doesn't do us any good. So it really worked out to the benefit of both parties, the seller and the buyer, to do it. So we went through all the appraisals, looked at how he devalued it. There is about a 40-foot elevation change in some of that property. I don't know if anybody's been out there. I know the mayor has, because I literally drove him out there on my gator so he could see. It's hard to realize what is actually out there. It's the only mountain in Portage. It's 40-foot elevation change from the NIPSCO easement down to the farmland. So when you get out there visually, in fact, the mayor said we need to take everybody out here so they can see this
I think
property.
we're going to be, especially as it gets warmer, not just
Yeah.
us, but even just residents, people, to show everything going into this, what we call the Hillcrest area.
Great. So we believe, based on all those issues and the focus of the board, we would control everything on the west side of the ditch, west side of the waterway, sorry.
It's okay. We'll have you pay the bill later.
That's right. Yeah, there's like a swear jar somewhere, I'm sure I got to put money in. So if we ever get to our waterfront district area, we now control that if this goes through. So what I would ask for the board tonight is if they would pass a motion to accept the revised contract to purchase. That would be an Amendment A, and authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the board and to sign the paperwork to close the deal when that time comes.
And I guess I would just add a few following bullet points to put, it's difficult, and I know we have the paper here tonight, so I want to make sure we have as clear as possible. But for instance, within this memorandum, the Portage RDC holds option rights to sell approximately 120 acres of adjacent property at $1.25 per square foot. That equates out to over $54,000 an acre. So assuming that would be a one-for-one on this new property that's adjacent, we would be looking at approximately 1.3 million over the appraised value that we're paying. That's one issue. The second issue would be, I believe it's what, 60% of the North Side project, or the North Side Interceptor project is
That's correct.
within this land or land we already own, so it's continuing down the issue with our utilities. And then lastly, the issue of once the land all comes together and is owned as one unit, we're able to do things that others can't, and it's easy to see the significant increase of value as it comes together now, one owner holding a significant more of the portion. So again, I think that was some of the underlying logic of why this was a little bit easier to put together.
And that value comes from your or other departments within city's investment, like the North Side Interceptor project, that adds value to that land.
So for clarity, for the purpose of those in the audience and those that are viewing, is there any way that you can give just a very brief description of what the project is going to entail from the purchase of this property?
What the project is to build on this? No, I can't, because we don't have a firm plan on what that project is at the moment. The North Side Interceptor project is actually a sewer project.
So yeah, but what we can say is that by uniting these properties, we take an undevelopable area and make it developable, which is really the mission of what an RDC is.
Right.
Okay.
We're eliminating obstacles to that development by other developers. That's really what our job is.
Thank you for that clarification.
And if I may, Mayor, part of, it's consolidating parcels under one ownership and control of the Redevelopment Commission, because as development occurs in the Hillcrest neighborhood area, instead of dealing with 10 to 15 property owners or more, you're dealing with one, and that's the Redevelopment Commission. And you would have control over what happens or how those properties are developed, as opposed to external entities.
Thank you.
So make a motion to approve the amended purchase agreement and giving authorization to Mayor Bonte to sign on the commission's behalf.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And then last, we have Mr. Cherry. I think this is pretty brief. This is the professional services agreement for our, it's actually our city engineer, but Great Lakes Engineering, right?
Yes. So after discussions with Commissioner Locke, I agree with him and others that our city engineer should look over any RDC engineering projects or parts of projects that are engineered as kind of a second look, and to make sure there's no issues further down the line. That's road projects, that's, you know, whatever projects engineering is involved in. Great Lakes Engineering has a professional service agreement with the city, but not with RDC. So what you have is pretty much a mirror contract just for the RDC. So as needed, he'll be used to do a second look on engineering. So, with the city's interest as our engineer. So I recommend that the board approve this professional service agreement.
And Mayor, I've read through it also and would agree and recommend approval to the commission members. From the standpoint, as you can see now, there's a potential for a large number of acres to be under control of the Redevelopment Commission. And as that develops, we're going to need assistance with an engineering company to review those, and it's in our best interest to have the city engineer review those so that we can consolidate and coordinate efforts between sanitary, sewer, water, whatever needs to be done up there with the city engineer.
That's what I meant to say.
Right.
Scott, have you had a chance to review the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you already motioned, was that right? Oh, no? Okay, and then,
Second.
all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any other business, or do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.